Hello and welcome to the weekly Rushes, except it's not happening every week at the moment. And that is solely because I like to wait until there's a burgeoning number of stories that can then grow, ripen and burst. Obviously it's going to be the usual mix of streaming news, casting news, movie news, dramas off screen and on screen. So, first story of the day is Harry Potter. Are you a Harry Potter fan? If you are, tell me which is your favourite Harry Potter film. I'm going to be brutally honest. I always wanted to like it more than I did. I always remember reading one of the first books and, you know, it was one of those books, wasn't it, crossover from kids to adults. Adults can read it, kids can read it. And I remember reading it and thinking, okay, it's quite simply written. It's not. I didn't think it was really layered or anything like that. Anyway, spawned the movies, multi-billion-dollar pound franchise. Now this week Warner Brothers did a presentation to investors and to the press, and they announced, as they rebrand HBO Max to just Max, like Pepsi Max. I don't know if that's going to be a big change. HBO Max. HBO Max, now Max, is to be the sort of the cheap and cheerful end of HBO. HBO is sort of premium, prestige, and HBO Max is a bit more common. So anyway, they've committed, get this, they've committed to a 10-decade, I kid you not, a 10-decade commitment to remaking all the Harry Potter books. This isn't a prequel. This isn't set after the Harry Potter films. They're going to go back and they're going to step through all the books again. It's going to be an entirely new cast. J.K. Rowling is one of the exec producers. It would appear that all of the controversies surrounding J.K. Rowling and her positions on trans women versus women haven't in any way kind of prevented Warner Brothers from demonstrating an enormous commitment to her sort of Hogwarts world. And it's hardly surprising because it's one of the cornerstones, mainstays of Warner Brothers' success, almost as big as, if not as big as, DC films in the other corner. So yeah, committing to a 10-decade, forget 10 series, 10-decade. That means this is going to be going until I'm 62. They're going to be young actors cast, and J.K. Rowling says this: Max, which is the channel, not a person, Max's commitment to preserving the integrity of my books is important to me, and I'm looking forward to being part of this new adaptation. And this is the important thing. I think this is why it probably appeals to J.K. Rowling. It will allow for a degree of depth and detail only afforded by a long-form television series. I personally think this is a catastrophic decision. I think Harry Potter had its moment. It was a zeitgeist. It was attached to the excitement of publication. The generation that was around when the original book came out and the next book came out were happening with it. They were the main sort of driver to the cinema. And as they get older, they, you know, and in a sense, even those people, you know, the people who were into the first and second books, as they started to have kids, you could drag the kids with you a little bit. But it was of its moment. You know, the excitement of queuing for Harry Potter books has gone. So how is this going to work? How are you going to rejuvenate and recreate that same zeitgeisty must-seeness? As I say, I think the only way to make this interesting is if they take a much sort of more sophisticated, because one of the things, I mean, I know the Harry Potter films, you know, they're great. Maddie loves them, you know, the family loves them. I find them a bit straightforward. I find them not sort of, but they're for kids, you know, but I want them to be a bit more complex, I suppose. I was always wishing them to be a bit more complex. Maybe there's room in this for it to be more complex. But I personally think there should have been an origin story or some backstory, or there should have been a subsequent story, or even a sort of sideways step story. But I personally think this is going to be a disaster. What do you think, guys? The other big news story of the week, we've plopped this on the Popcorn Junkies Instagram account, and this is Kim Kardashian. She's going to slay, baby, slay American Horror Story Season 12. She is co-starring in it with the long-term sort of alumni Emma Roberts, Ryan Murphy. He's kind of well known for kind of keeping his stable of actors together. He had Sarah Paulson for a while, and he often sort of dips into Evan Peters, a sort of, you know, the same pool of actors. Well, he's cast Kim Kardashian in this next series, which is subtitled Delicate. And I think the idea around this, or the sort of log line that's kind of crept out, is it's going to follow a woman who becomes convinced that a sinister figure is going to great lengths to make sure her pregnancy doesn't happen. Delicate Condition is described as a feminist update of Rosemary's Baby. Now that could be good. This has echoes of Lady Gaga. I can't remember what season or seasons she was in, but I remember when we were watching, going through each series, me and Maddie, Lady Gaga really sort of pinged off the screen, and it really was a sort of eureka moment when we sort of discovered, oh right, Lady Gaga can actually act. Wow. And look what's happened to her. A couple of Oscar nominations, is it now? Potentially with Joker 2 coming through. Could there be more? I personally don't think Kim Kardashian has the chops for this, though, although someone did say, I can't remember on our channel, she's acting all the way through the Kardashians. It's true. It's a different kind of acting, but maybe she's just going to act as herself, in which case that might be quite straightforward. If I have a more overarching problem, it's with American Horror Story as a whole. I think Ryan Murphy, unfortunately, is now falling foul of every single thing he makes, with possibly the exception of Dharma, though even that was tipping this way, becomes quite a sort of predictable camp fest with similar shots, similar sequences, similar structure to the stories, similar reveals, similar moments of gore. There's very few surprises. It's like he needs to get someone creative in a different director with a different vision to mince it up and give it some more magic. Because for me, a new Ryan Murphy American Horror Story series isn't necessarily anything to get excited about. And in a weird way, even for me, Kim Kardashian being in this is a sell. Talking of Lady Gaga, Joker 2, Joker, Folie à Deux. Folie à Deux. Obviously, we now know that Lady Gaga is playing a reversion form of Harley Quinn, perhaps the most authentic version of Harley Quinn. And let's not forget her character in the original sort of comics and the story, the origin story. She is I think she's a young sort of student psychologist who asks to go in and do a sort of project almost, or explore or examine Arthur Fleck, the Joker, and it goes terribly wrong, or it goes terribly right, and it turns into a sort of mad, twisted, codependent, mutually destructive romance stroke love story. There's been lots of chat about whether this is a musical. There's been lots of photos of them dancing up and down that similar set of stairs in the Bronx. If I'm honest, no one could have been more excited about the announcement of Joker 2, and one also feels that Joaquin Phoenix doesn't often commit to things like this, where it's a sequel to something that he's been very successful in. And so I thought, well, this must have something about it that's pulled him in too, so there must be quality here. I'm not entirely convinced, nor happy, nor looking forward to the fact that it could be music orientated, though I'm kind of hoping that the music comes in a sort of music therapeutic fashion, i.e. music is used in the Arkham Asylum where they are. But I just thought we'd have a look through some photos. Why do we do that? We rarely do that. Why do we do that? Let's have a look through some photos and have a think about. So first one up, look, there we go. There's Joaquin Phoenix, walking down the stairs with a cigarette in his mouth, looking dishevelled. Always looks good, always looking good. I mean, I'm beginning to worry that they're overusing those stairs in the Bronx. It's West 167th Street. You know, it was an emblematic moment, but do we revisit? I am also generally hoping, you know, having seen footage of the Joker running down the streets of New York, we also saw those in the first film, so I'm getting slightly concerned that we might end up in a sort of slightly, I mean, a lot of people accuse the first Joker of being derivative of so many other things, Martin Scorsese, cinema of the 70s, etc. I'm slightly concerned that Joker 2 could be a little bit too derivative of the first Joker film, if you know what I mean. There's a photo, there's Lady Gaga. Look at that great big rig with a camera filming Arthur Fleck coming up the stairs. That one, look, I mean, who's become possessed now? That's Lady Gaga. That's how Nadia looks when she's gone to the fridge and she's discovered that there's a bottle of Cava in there. That's her face there. Look at this. Look, the two of them dancing together. Joaquin Phoenix's face there, maniacal, manic. Liking it. It does look dark, but I have got concerns. And in a weird way, the photos that have been released, whereas last time, you know, the footage that was released of him on the tube and all that got me really excited. I wish I'd seen something new in these images, if I'm honest. In some more sort of off-screen kind of news of a notorious nature, do you remember the actor Gerard Depardieu? A giant, almost literally, of French cinema. He's been in so many films. I remember him in Jean de Florette, Manon de Sauce, Cyrano de Bergerac, all this kind of stuff. I think he also, did he not do a crossover movie? Was it Green Card or something in the States? A massive doyen of French cinema. Almost the sort of Marlon Brando of French cinema. And I had the, you could say, misfortune of interviewing him at the Cannes Film Festival many years ago. And he did little else but grunt, not in a farty way, he just made noises, he just grunted, which actually comes up in this. Anyway, Gerard Depardieu has been accused of sexually inappropriate behaviour by 13 women. Yet this is a report published by French investigating news website Mediapart. Apparently 13 women have accused him of sexually inappropriate behaviour. Depardieu's lawyers have pushed back against this, quote, saying, these are very subjective assessments and moral judgments. He formally denies all the charges likely to fall under criminal law. In support of Depardieu, despite these 13 accusers, a lot of the producers and directors who've worked on many of the projects that these women also worked on have themselves denied any knowledge of Depardieu's actions. Some of the things that these women complain about or have testified to in their statements include having hands put on their buttocks, between their legs, on their thighs or on their stomach, as well as obscene sexual propositions and sometimes insistent groaning. That's kind of what we heard. He grunted a lot in the chair. I mean, he did answer questions, but he sort of grunted a lot as he moved about in the chair. They also claim, many of these women, that people on set would brush this under the carpet. This is something that we've heard of so many times. Think of the Jimmy Savile case here in the UK. People say this has happened. You go, no, don't. That's just what he does. Or no, it's not right. You're not right. And so there's very much the feeling that, they would say things like, oh, it's okay. It's just Gerard and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so 30 cases. I think these are civil cases. I don't think he could be going to prison, but I think he could be up for damages if these accusations stick. Now, superheroes and all that kind of malarkey. James Gunn, he's head of DC. He's directing the new Superman film, director of Guardians of the Galaxy that's coming out. Used to be at Marvel, now he's at DC. We've talked about that a lot. The reason I want to talk about him again is we've talked about it here, and I really want some of the superhero fans that watch this and watch a lot of our sort of trailer reactions and movie reviews. Do you feel that there is superhero fatigue? Because James Gunn does, and I'm pleased James Gunn does, because I do, and yet when I say it, I sometimes feel that lots of superhero fans just can't see it, or just are refusing to see it. And so I just wanted to read out some of James Gunn's comments about this. His suggestion is that too much stuff is now happening, certainly at Marvel, after the Avengers Endgame thing, where it built to such a crescendo of drama, a click of the finger, or click of the thumb, half the world is dead, then they all stop popping back. You can't get more dramatic than that. It's almost like Marvel's superhero kind of journey prematurely finished. I was going to say something else there, but I thought it was inappropriate. And James Gunn agrees with this. And I think the only way forward is, in a sense, doing what they've done with the Joker film, what they're doing presumably with the Batman next film and the Batman film that's come. Maybe if they were to do a spin-off with the Riddler, they have to go for character. They have to go for story, and they have to go for character. James Gunn says, if it becomes just a bunch of nonsense on screen, it gets really boring. I want Marvel to make good films, but it's hard in the wake of Endgame. He then says, I think there is such a thing as superhero fatigue. I think it doesn't have anything to do with superheroes. So it's interesting. He doesn't believe the fatigue is to do with superheroes, like I don't. I think there's, well, actually, I think there is superhero fatigue, but there isn't comic book fatigue. And for me, that's an important distinction. And he says it's to do with the kind of stories that are being told. A lot of the films have taken their eye off the ball, and that ball is character. As he says, we love Batman, we love Iron Man, because they're incredible characters. But when you just have lots of stuff crashing into each other on screen and banging and bashing and CGI and all that kind of stuff, it gets really boring. And I just want to ask people who get really hot under the collar about anyone criticising, like, not just criticising the CGI, but like, big things smashing into each other, great big monsters kind of doing this, and then great big buildings falling. Isn't there a limit to that you can enjoy? I would argue you can't really even enjoy that. Isn't it just stuff to get you from one interesting character moment to another? So I'm really sick and tired of all that. And I also am really sick and tired of this kind of multiverse plane jumping kind of stuff, because I feel it's just, I've said it before, weak storytelling, which allows you on the turn of a page in a script to go from here to there without worrying about any of the connecting issues. I just think it's weak. I think it's lazy. And he finally says, if you don't have a story at the base of it, just watching things bash each other, no matter how clever they are, gets fatiguing. Discuss. I agree with him. Oh, wow. Come on, guys. This is great news. Paddington is back. The last time we saw him, he was having sandwiches or tea, wasn't he, with the Queen, the late Queen. God bless her soul. Paddington 3 is coming back. Paddington in Peru. They're going to start filming in July. It's been 6 years since Paddington 2 came out. I've only seen Paddington 1, but I keep hearing that Paddington 2 is potentially one of the greatest films ever made. Really? Is it really? Obviously, his origin story is in Peru. This was kind of, not inferred, it was shown at the beginning of the first Paddington. So I think this is quite a good revitalization of this franchise, taking him back to Peru. and exploring perhaps his family, his origins, where he came from, all that kind of stuff. It's presumed and assumed that Ben Whishaw will return as the voice of Paddington, and that some of the usual suspects will be there: Julie Walters, Sally Hawkins, Hugh Bonneville, Imelda Staunton, etc., etc. The first two films, can you believe it, grossed something like $500 million, which makes the Paddington franchise one of the most successful British-born franchises there is. So it's no surprise that there's a threequel coming. But yes, set in Paddington in Peru. Are you excited about that? Are you a Paddington fan? For all you art house film lovers out there, and not necessarily just art house film lovers out there, the Cannes Film Festival hasn't started, it happens in May, have announced their lineup of films that are both in competition, out of competition, etc. But I just thought I'd run through some of the big announcements. There's some big films being screened, and often Cannes is a marketplace. You know, down La Croisette by the sea, there are people cracking deals, brokering deals at tables. You know, it's happening on behind closed doors. You bang on doors, every single office room in the Carlton Hotel, everyone's doing deals. Anyway, so what's coming to Cannes this year? So this is interesting. Harrison Ford is going to be there with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. That is, I think, it's going to be the world premiere. The reason that's important, they must feel very confident at Lucasfilms and Disney that this film is good. Because, of course, if it screens and everyone goes, which is what a Cannes audience will do, they will boo stuff very, very freely, then that film is going to be dead on arrival. So I think the fact that they've allowed it to have its world premiere at the Cannes Film Festival is a huge vote of confidence in how good that's going to be. Other big news, Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro, which I believe is to do with the deaths of a number of people where there's land that is rich in oil. It involves a Native American Indian sort of owners of the land, and there's mysterious death, and then it's investigated and all this kind of stuff. I think we might be looking at Leonardo DiCaprio playing a bit of a baddie. I think he's good as a baddie. He was brilliant in Django Unchained. Let's just hope it's not as long as The Irishman, and let's hope he doesn't use any of that ridiculous, youthifying kind of technology, which we just hated. Wes Anderson's Asteroid City will be heading to the Cannes Film Festival for its first screening. There's going to be a short by Spanish filmmaker Pedro Almodovar, and guess who's in it? Ethan Hawke. And everyone's dad, Pedro Pascal. He's going to be in there. It's called Strange Way of Life. From what I'm hearing, I think this is like a short film version, or not remake, but a short film spin on the Brokeback Mountain thing. I think it's a western of sorts. Opening the festival is Johnny Depp's comeback film, which is called Jean du Barry. That's going to raise the curtain at the festival, and it is being talked about as Johnny Depp's comeback film. I think he plays the king, I can't remember, King Louis the something or other, makeup and all that kind of stuff. So it'd be interesting to see if he can remember his lines and walk in a straight line. Other notable films that are coming to the festival: Ken Loach's The Old Oak. Ken Loach does frustrate me. Jonathan Glazer, director of Under the Skin and Sexy Beast, he's coming back with a movie called The Zone of Interest. That will be good. He's an interesting filmmaker. Takes him a long time between films, something like 6 to 8 years between each of his films. Todd Haynes is May, December. I'm not a Todd Haynes fan after Tar. Sorry, no, lots of people loved it. I think it was one of the most overrated films of last year. They're talking about screening and showing The Idol, which is the Lily Rose Depp and The Weeknd's film, which has been sort of mired in controversy around inappropriate sort of content being shot for it, torture porn, actors and actresses being asked to do things beyond their comfort zone, all that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if that actually gets screened or given its sort of debut screening at the Cannes Film Festival. And also down there, there's a movie Perfect Days by Wim Wenders and Occupied City, Steve McQueen's new film. So there'll be a lot coming out of the Cannes Film Festival. You get a lot of reviews early, you get a lot of previews early, but we're going to get a clear sense, certainly, as to whether any of these films are actually any good. And you'll probably get quite an early sense of what might be sort of nibbling away at the Oscars next year. Any Succession fans out there? Of course, Succession is coming to an end. And I have to confess, I was talking to a dear friend, Elliot, today, and although Succession appeals to some, it doesn't appeal to everyone. It's an acquired taste, I suppose that's what I'm trying to say. But one of the absolute stars of it is Matthew McFadden. For me, he's the guiltiest pleasure in it. I mean, they're all brilliant, don't get me wrong. Kieran Culkin is sensational. But Matthew McFadden is particularly good too. And this is a curious casting decision. It looks like if Deadpool 3 happens, and I keep hearing that there might be, it might have been not shelved, but put on ice a little bit. Obviously, Ryan Reynolds' new film. And let's not forget, Ryan Reynolds filmed that little skit, didn't he, with Hugh Jackman, sort of suggesting that maybe they're going to reprise Wolverine in it, so that's exciting. But Matthew McFadden is going to be in Deadpool 3, all being good and it all heading ahead. Obviously, as I say, Hugh Jackman's in there. It's also got Emma Corrin signed on to be a character that's a villain. Emma Corrin as a villain, Emma Corrin from The Crown. What's your favourite Pixar film? I think one of the ones that we're most fond of in this house, there's all the obvious ones, Toy Story and all that kind of stuff, but we really like Up. Do you like Up? The one with the old guy, the miserable old guy, Carl, whose wife, Ellie, has died many years before, and we get that terribly sad and upsetting montage at the beginning, what their ambitions and dreams were to go travelling, and then she passes away and he's on his own. And then a Boy Scout comes to the door and they go on an adventure and lots of balloons come out the top and they float off. It's all lovely. Well, guess what? There's going to be a sequel. It's not a full feature, it's a short. And I think that's really nice. And I think Pixar should think about this a little bit more. Rather than making full sequels, I think they should think about making short sequels that kind of work as a little coda or a little kind of, I don't know, epilogue to the original film. Give you a little taste of something, but don't overdo it. This is called Carl's Date. And it's going to be playing before the new Pixar film Elemental. So if you go and see Elemental, just before it, there'll be a short, and it will be Carl's Date. The tagline for this is New Adventure, Same Wingman, which I think refers to Doug the dog. You might know Doug the dog. Squirrel! Doug the dog, who, you know, is forever distracted by squirrel, just like Nanny Di. If you watch Green Fingered Hell, Nanny Di is exactly the same, not just with squirrels, but with anything, with almost anything. Sun, cloud, wind. Very strange. Ed Asner obviously was the voice of Carl in the original film. Ed Asner sadly passed away in 2021. But the writer and director of this, Bob Peterson, is taking on voice duties. So it'll be interesting to see if he can capture that same depth and graveliness of Ed Asner. So this is about Carl heading off and trying to do and live out the very, very thing that Ellie wanted them to do. This is a little bit like Ellie saying, look, I can't do it with you, but please go and do it yourself. Live action, live action, live action. Everywhere you look, Disney are making live action films. I think there's very much a sense of things at the moment in Hollywood. If you look at Warner Brothers' announcement, if you look at Disney's kind of activities, not necessarily in the Marvel field, though even in the Marvel, lots of sequels, lots of remakes, lots of revisiting original IPs or franchises or films and rebooting, restructuring, re-releasing, remaking, revising. It's like, where are all the original ideas? But never fear, I think it's when we get these moments of creative kind of impoverishment that greatness sort of emerges from the ashes. Anyway, sorry, that's a prelude to saying, oh, another Disney live action. And what is it this time? Moana. Yep, you heard it here. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is going to be producing a live action version of Moana. Now, he might be producing it. He was obviously the voice artist for demigod Maui in the original animation. Now, for me, I think for this to work, I would quite like to see Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson play a live-action Maui. I think that could work quite well. You know, he embodied the animated character, and I think this would just be a sort of, it would almost be a sort of logical development of the original film. It has one of the greatest songs I've ever liked within a Disney film. It's one of mine and the girls' favourites. You're welcome. Whatever that is. I think it's that. I wonder if they'll keep that song. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson says of the project, bearing in mind at this stage he's only producing, and bearing in mind that the original film, the animated film, made $644 million. Over $500 million, that's quite something, isn't it? Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson says, just of producing, and it hasn't been suggested that he might play the character. I'm deeply humbled and overcome with gratitude to bring the beautiful story of Moana to the live action big screen. This story is my culture, and this story is emblematic of our people's grace and warrior strength. Any of you fans of The Last of Us? Who wasn't a fan of The Last of Us? And I have to say, we weren't just fans of The Last of Us for Pedro Pascal. He was an enormous pull, he was an enormous draw. He's only gone and absolutely sort of sealed his reputation as just the most lovable face and person in Hollywood. He's become the internet daddy to so many people, though I do find that phrase, if that is the right phrase, I find it a bit sinister, and he's not sinister at all. But alongside him was obviously Bella Ramsey. Bella Ramsey, who identifies as non-binary, so is referred to as they. Bella was, of course, also a key part of the Game of Thrones series too. Well, Bella, has found their next project, which is called Monstrous Beauty. And this sounds fascinating. Bella is going to be playing an aspiring playwright in the court of King Charles II, who is blighted with the condition, which means that she is virtually entirely covered in hair. Just that alone, that for me is the pitch. That's the pitch. I'm in. Well, Bella Ramsey's taking it on. Dominic West is there as King Charles II. Ruth Negga is in there too as his mistress. And Fiona Shaw is going to be in there as Aphra Behn. So this is based upon a true moment in history, if you like. Bit of a freak show situation there. Anyway, Bella Ramsey thoroughly impressed us. They absolutely knocked it out the ballpark. And especially when you consider that Bella Ramsey had to contend with so much trolling, given the fact that she didn't look evidently or similar enough to the original character that they were playing from the game, the Last of Us game. Bella managed to prove that they could transcend all that trolling and criticism and absolutely made the part their own. So I'm excited about this. So whilst Warner Brothers are making big announcements, Star Wars Celebration have been making big announcements. We'll get into one of those in a minute. Warner Brothers, Disney have been making big announcements. So too has the studio Illuminations, who have obviously given us things like The Minions, Shrek, Despicable Me, Puss in Boots, all that sort of stuff. Well, in a sort of similar kind of presentation to press and investors, I guess, the CEO of Illuminations has teased up these possible projects. Shrek 5, Mike Myers could be coming back with the original cast. Sing 3, never got Sing. And he's also teased the idea of more sort of Secret Life of Pets type stuff. But the big thing and the big news here is obviously Puss in Boots has been a major success for Illuminations, and I think they're tied up with Universal. The Minions has been a major success, Despicable Me a major success. But what about the donkey from Shrek? Well, Eddie Murphy said in January this year, if DreamWorks ever came with another Shrek, I'd do it in 2 seconds. I love playing Donkey. They did Puss in Boots movies. I was like, they should have done a Donkey movie. Donkey is way funnier than Puss in Boots. I mean, I love Puss in Boots, but he ain't funny as the donkey. He's got a fair point. And I think if they make a Donkey film, Donkey in Boots or something like that, it could be a staggeringly successful film. But which of all those are your favourites? Sing, I never got to grips with Sing. The girls, I took them to see Sing 1. They went to see Sing 2 on their own. It's the one in which sort of a group of animals compete in a talent show, don't they? So you realise Illumination Studios have got some cracking sort of projects there. And talking of Star Wars, I know there aren't many Star Wars fans on the channel, but you know what? If you're a movie fan and you stumble across this, you might think, oh, why haven't you mentioned Star Wars? Daisy Ridley is returning as Rey in a new Star Wars movie as Disney and Lucasfilms announced 3 new films. The reason I want to talk about this, I was messaging my mate Nenad last week all about this. I think Star Wars is in more of a crisis than Marvel. I think Marvel is on the edge of total catastrophe, and unfortunately I think Star Wars has fallen into the chasm of total catastrophe. Again, we're in a situation where there's oversaturation. There's too many Disney Plus series where people are just trudging around in the sand without any real purpose, not really knowing where they're going. And it just means that, you know, oh, okay, this slots in alongside this story and this film, and that comes before Return of the Jedi and after Empire Strikes Back, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I love Star Wars, so theoretically I should be into all that kind of, what's the order? Anyway, so they've announced 3 new films, and there are some aspects to this announcement that I like, but the majority of them I don't. I feel for Daisy Ridley. I think she's great. I think she's brilliant as Rey. But given the response to the recent 3 films, I don't understand how she's been put at the helm of something new. Not that she's responsible in any way for how the original or the new 3 films developed, from The Force Awakens through to The Rise of Skywalker. But she was part of something that didn't really work. Not her fault, but it didn't really work. So there's that. The Star Wars film that she's going to be in is to be directed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. I think I've pronounced that correctly. Brilliant and really laudable that we've got a woman director there. But when you look into her past experience, it's a majority documentaries. I literally can't understand why or how she's got the gig. I mean, I really can't. And that's not to say she won't be good, but I just don't understand. At the opposite end of the spectrum, before anyone says, oh, you're being sort of gendered, you're being sexist and all that kind of stuff, I'm not at all, because they've also announced that Dave Filoni is going to direct one of the other ones. Now, Dave Filoni is a huge creative force behind The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and was not one of, if not the brain behind most of the animated Star Wars content. I've not watched any of the animated Star Wars stuff, but I realise that Dave Filoni is part of that. Based on what I've seen of the more recent stuff that has his influence in it or on it, namely all those shows I just mentioned, I'm not a Dave Filoni fan. I don't think he's necessarily right for it either. He's going to direct another Star Wars film. I mean, you know, the animated series are there. They're part of the canon. But the vast majority of casual viewers or casual Star Wars fans don't step towards them that much. And so I think the idea that Dave Filoni is the right person is simply coming from Lucasfilms thinking, he's been with us for so long, he must be the right person. I don't think he is. And then we come to the third director of the third film. So they've announced 3 new films. And the third film's director I am excited about. This is James Mangold. I think this is a good fit, albeit we need to see how well he deals with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I think that's going to be all right. I think he's a safe pair of hands. He did Ford v Ferrari, really enjoyed that. So he's the most exciting prospect. I'm really concerned about this. I hear that the new series of The Mandalorian as well isn't rating particularly well either. So I do think we're in a bit of an existential crisis. The Force is not strong with these new Star Wars films. And finally, we arrive at a female actress, an actress that, oh my God, we have just become so obsessed with, enamored with, impressed by, excited by. Here's a clue. You can't see anything, can you? It's Mia Goth. She is sensational in Pearl. If you want to see something weird, whacked out, and you're not too sensitive about blood and gore, please see Pearl. It's an incredibly comedic and clever and inventive and unnerving film with an astonishing central female performance at the heart of it. She has been signed up for a Marvel picture. Everyone who's good, everyone who's anyone has a moment in their Marvel sun. She's joining Mahershala Ali in Blade. This is obviously a revisit, reboot, remake, going back to everything I was saying earlier about how Hollywood has 0 original ideas at the moment. This is a new sort of manifestation of Blade, who is essentially a sort of human vampire type. He's not entirely unlike Morbius, is he? Is he like Morbius? Is he Morbius-like? I don't know. He's a hybrid sort of vampire type, thanks to his mother being bitten and killed by a bloodsucker during childbirth. The original films obviously starred Wesley Snipes back in the 2000s, and this is going to be interesting. You know, Mia Goth. If Blade, I never got into the original Blades, but if Blade is all about vampires and sort of, you know, twisted vampiric kind of blood-sucking stuff, Mia Goth has to be a monster in this, right? I mean, she plays monstrous. She can flip from warm and lovely and enticing and alluring and mesmerizing and hypnotizing to complete savage psychopathy. And she'll have your guts for garters and tear your toenails off through your nostrils in the switch of a button. In the flick of a switch. Which brings us not necessarily to films of the week, because not a lot is released this week, and because we haven't been with you for I think about 2 weeks now, is it? Here's some films of the moment. So films of the moment that you might want to go and watch. One film that is released this week is Renfield. Renfield is the new Nick Cage, Nicholas Hoult, Awkwafina project. This is directed by Chris McKay, who made the Batman Lego movie. He also made Tomorrow War. And this is about Renfield, who is Dracula's kind of erstwhile assistant, lackey, helper. He's an employee. Renfield is a reluctant employee of Dracula. And so consequently, I think this is a film about how Renfield sort of sources Dracula's victims to drink blood. Nick Cage giving us just Nick Cage, and I think that's why I'm going to see this. I just want to see Nick Cage being batshit crazy, quite literally batshit crazy, yet again. And then I think in this film, Renfield perhaps is about him standing up to his boss. He's got the worst boss in history. So we're going to be comedy, but there's a lot of gore. Just from the trailer, there's a lot of body parts coming off. So that's Renfield, and that's out this week. Other films worth checking out. Air, which is the story, the sort of sports historical drama starring Matt Damon, Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck's directed it too. Also stars Jason Bateman, Viola Davis, and Chris Tucker. The review for this is on the channel. I won't give away too much. This is the story of the Air Jordan shoe and how Nike managed to secure Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan wasn't the best sportsman at the time. I mean, he was obviously a sensational sportsman, but this is, they essentially gamble on him. They lay a bet. They try and woo him away from Adidas and Converse. And this is the story of all the machinations, business machinations, the wheeling, dealing, the meetings, the phoning the agents, the offering money. So it's about business, but it's got a bunch of really reliable actors in there. And it's a slice of American corporate history. The big film, which has absolutely surprised everyone because it's actually got terrible reviews, is Super Mario Brothers, which it's got an amazing voice cast. It's got Chris Pratt, Anya Taylor-Joy, Jack Black, Seth Rogen, just to name a few. And this is the story, obviously, of Mario and Luigi, the Mario Brothers. I think they're plumbers, aren't they? I always seem to remember when I played the game. I lost interest in the Mario Brothers after the kind of little Nintendo rectangular things where you do. This is apparently dedicated and aimed at huge Super Mario fans. This is Nintendo through and through. If you're not au fait with all the rules, regulations, and how the game works, you might not get a lot from this. That said, it's done staggering business. It's the 4th highest grossing film of 2023, which in and of itself isn't massive. But it's the 2nd highest grossing film ever based on a video game. So although there are opposite ends of the genre spectrum, if you think of this and The Last of Us, video games are really going down well. So that's Super Mario Brothers, great one to distract your kids with. And there you have your weekly rushes. Okay, it's been 14 days or so, but I think there's a lot of news there for you to sink your teeth in. Let me know what stories floated your boat, share your thoughts below, and we hope you have a film-loving, streaming-loving weekend.